Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to do a very quick simple watercolor demonstration for you. So to start with, as you can see, I'm going to be doing my version of this toadstool painting, working from my phone. So to start with, I do recommend doing a very basic sketch. Don't worry about what particular pencil you need to use or anything like that. Any pencil will do. What I would recommend is when you start putting in some basic lines, put these in quite lightly, because obviously if you go in a little bit too harsh, then those lines will show through when you add watercolor. A little tip is going forward, you can use watercolor pencils for doing outlines, and then when you do add your watercolor paint, those lines will disappear. So once you've got a basic sketch, and as you could probably see there from the way that I was just literally scribbling in some basic lines, you don't have to be too specific. You just want an idea on where everything has to go to help you with the composition. So I'm using a little bit of paint and more water to start with, just so that it's nice and light and you can build it up as you go. I do also recommend not worrying too much about using the brush in a particular way. I do favour stippling with a paintbrush to start with. It helps you to get a feel for the paint and a feel for the water. One of the most important things to remember with watercolour painting is it's not just how you use the paint, it's how you use the water. Something else you may have seen if you have been to my channel before, that something you can do with watercolour is you can pull some paint out. So if there's an area where you've put too much of a particular colour, perhaps it's a bit too intense, perhaps there's a colour there that's been put in the wrong place, just wash your brush out, add a little bit of water to it, and just pull and spread some of that paint. So I really do recommend doing small little paintings like this one to start with, just to get you used to the brushes, used to the paint, and also how much quantities to use when you're doing your various different amounts of paint to water ratio. I recommend for something like this, using a couple of brushes can be quite helpful. A larger round head brush, I'm using a 12, and a smaller round head brush, I'm using a 4. So it's always good to start off with your larger brush. It helps you to sort of fill larger areas a little bit quicker. And then once you've done that, you can move to a smaller brush just for more definition in particular areas. As I mentioned just now, when it comes to starting out with watercolour, I think a lot of people automatically think you have to use the brush backwards and forwards, sort of wide strokes. And whilst that can be helpful for particular types of paintings, when you're starting out, I do recommend doing a stippling motion of literally just dropping that paint in. So if you've got enough water on your brush, and you will know this the more you get used to it, you'll start to instinctively know how much water, how much paint to add. Obviously it's a little bit of a practice game to start with, but that's absolutely normal. It's always also quite helpful to start off with a little bit more water, because then this helps you to see just how light that tone of paint is going to be. If there are some specific areas where you want it to be a bit more intense in terms of the colour you're using, add a little bit more paint. So you can probably see that's exactly what I'm doing here. When I'm putting in some colours, might look a bit too light, so I go back into the pan set, pick up more paint on the brush and drop it into the area. This is also a very good way of starting off layering colours so that they start to blend naturally with the water whilst the area that you're painting is still damp on the paper. So in terms of materials, it's also really worth talking a little bit about paper. So watercolour paper and mixed media paper are usually quite standard. I prefer mixed media paper personally because you can use it for all sorts of different medias. Something else I do recommend, and if you've been to my channel before, you've probably seen me do this quite a lot, is once everything is completely dried, you can go in and work into your painting with pen, with pencils, with pastels, all sorts of dry mediums. I really like using pen. As I said, if you have been to my channel before, you'll see I do that quite a lot, and it really does help boost and lift paintings, particularly in the beginning when you're getting used to watercolour, what quantities of water and paint to use. It helps you just to get used to that and add a little boost to your paintings in the beginning. Something else I do is I dart my gaze backwards and forwards constantly between the subject I'm looking at and my painting, just to help me with the composition, the angles, lines and colours as well. So this is something I recommend will be really helpful for you when you're sort of doing sketches and paintings and you're working from life or from reference photos. You want to be darting your gaze and observing as much as you possibly can. I will put some links down in the description to some of my other tutorials on watercolour, just to give you some more ideas on how you can use the paint, how you use the brushes, and also for tips. Something I do recommend also is if you have a pan set like I have here, which is really good for traveling. If you want to do some paintings out and about, they're much easier to store, to carry around with you than having tubes of watercolour paint. One of my top tips for this is even though these pan sets do last a very long time, there will be specific colours you might really favour, and those particular little pans of colour might run out first. If you find that happens, sometimes replacing one particular pan of a specific colour can be a little bit costly. Something that can help with this is to have some tubes of watercolour paint, squeeze a little bit of that paint into that pan, let it set, and it's basically exactly the same thing. You can do all sorts of little hacks like that, including making your own shades and tones of colour by adding white, for example, to different tubes of watercolour paint, making sort of a pastel tone, putting that into the pan, so you've got a very unique palette just for you. Another good tip I would definitely give when you're starting out with watercolour, as I said, it can take a little bit of getting used to in terms of how much water, how much colour to use, and whilst you're getting used to the brushes you're using as well, is once everything is dry, as I mentioned earlier, you can go back in and work into your painting with colour pencil and pens and pastels. The wonderful thing about this is it allows you to get used to how colour works and how watercolour specifically as a paint medium works, and it allows you to get some base colours down, learn about colour mixing, and whilst you're sort of going through that process, you can then start learning a little bit about other mediums such as colour pencil and pen. So you can incorporate lots of different mediums into watercolour as well, which I think is a wonderful thing and adds to your art skills, which is always wonderful. As I mentioned, I will pop a link in the description to any videos I think might be relevant and helpful to this little demonstration. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you're finding this mini demo helpful. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your wonderful comments. I do read them all. And I will be back soon for lots more. I've got lots more coming up on my channel. I've got lots on here already, art demos. I do paper craft as well, so I've got art journaling, junk journaling, virtual exhibitions, all sorts. So thanks very much, guys, and I will see you soon for my next video.